My stepmother decided to erase me from her life and take everything for herself. She thought I would simply accept it. Well, they clearly underestimated me. That was their biggest mistake. My name is Alex. I'm 24 years old, and to be honest, life started spiraling out of control from the moment my father brought Stephanie into the house. Oh, believe me, at first glance, she seemed like the perfect stepmother. Always so sweet and smiling. But that was just in public. At home, she turned into a real witch with a cold smile and icy stare. Straight out of a horror movie, but without the special effects. The only special effect here was her relentless desire to snatch up everything that didn't belong to her. Stephanie was a master manipulator. In fact, she was the boss of all manipulators. Her main goal wasn't love for my father, and it certainly wasn't taking care of me. This was a game, and the stakes were high. Our inheritance. The house, the money, everything my father would leave behind. She and her 22-year-old daughter, Emma, were planning to squeeze out every last cent. Oh, Emma. If cunning were a sport, she'd win the Olympic gold. This girl, with her innocent smile and wide eyes, always pretended to be so kind and just happened to be around whenever something could be grabbed. But honestly, she was just a reflection of her mother, a younger version of the same hypocrisy. At first, I thought it was all in my head. You know, maybe I was just jealous that my dad was spending more time with them than with me. I tried to ignore it, pretending I didn't care. But something about their glances, those half-whispers, kept bothering me. Sometimes I felt like the hero in a cheap drama where everyone around is hiding secrets, and I'm the fool slowly uncovering them. But do you know what the final straw was? One day, I was walking past my father's study and overheard their conversation. I froze in place, like that idiot in movies who realizes they're about to hear something terrible. And guess what? Stephanie was spilling her dirty plans to my father. She said something like, "Darling, don't worry. Everything will work out. It's all for Emma. Alex doesn't deserve anything anyway. He's just wasting your time and money." I stood there in shock. So that was it. They were really planning to throw me aside. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was echoing through my entire body. I knew something was wrong, but now everything made sense. They decided I was just trash to be discarded, and in that moment, my life became a battlefield. After I accidentally overheard that disgusting conversation, the puzzle finally came together. But do you know what's worse? All this crap started unfolding right in front of my eyes. My father, who had always been there for me, suddenly became almost a ghost in my life. He seemed to be drifting away from me more and more each day. Meanwhile, Stephanie and her mini-clone Emma spent more and more time in the study, discussing so-called family matters. Only now, it seemed that family included just the two of them and my father. I was just an extra at this celebration of life. My father began to change. Where we used to talk easily over dinner and laugh about random things, his face now grew more cold and his answers short and distant. It was like someone had prescribed him a course on how to become an emotionless machine. And yes, that someone was Stephanie. Like a sinister director, she was skillfully pulling the right strings. Her performance was flawless. Every time I tried to find out what was going on, my father brushed me off like an annoying fly. "Stephanie is just looking out for us," he would say with such calmness that I nearly burst out laughing. Looking out for us? She couldn't care less about us. The only thing she cared about was getting my money as quickly as possible. But of course, he was under her spell. Oh, and don't forget about Emma, that walking innocent girl. She played along with Stephanie so well that I sometimes thought they had a whole troupe of professional actresses, all to make sure my father believed it was all for his happiness. Seriously, he even started repeating her words like a mantra. "It's all for Emma's future, and Alex is independent. He doesn't need help." Since when did being independent become a reason to be cut out of your own family? Just because I can cook my own pasta and pay my rent, I'm now unnecessary? Honestly, the situation began to feel like a bad episode of a cheap soap opera, except this was my real-life nightmare. I tried talking to my dad. You know, typical family conversations. "Dad, what's going on?" Or, "Do you even realize what she's doing to you?" But he brushed me off every time, like I was a child whining because someone took my candy. "You're just being dramatic," he'd say. Oh, of course I'm being dramatic. What else do you call it when you realize they're trying to kick you out of your own family for some bogus scam? Every time I saw Stephanie gently whispering something into my father's ear, I felt everything inside me tighten. I could literally imagine her behind the scenes planning her next move. Okay, today we'll convince him that Alex is his own worst enemy. And worst of all, it was working. So, essentially, I was on the front lines, but my own allies had switched sides. My suspicions grew stronger by the day. Something about those endless whispers and my father's constant disappearances from my life didn't sit right with me. It felt like this whole act of "I'm the caring wife and mother" was horribly fake. And even if it only looked fake, I could feel in my gut that they were plotting something. I decided I couldn't just sit idly by, waiting like an idiot for them to toss me out of my own family. It was time to act. The first thing I did was break into my father's study. Yeah, I know how it sounds. Breaking into your own father's office isn't exactly honorable, but I had a plan, and I wasn't about to just sit around. Besides, if anyone was breaking moral boundaries here, it certainly wasn't me. I started rummaging through the documents. I'll admit, I felt like a character in some cool detective movie. You know, when the hero finds the secret folder with all the dirt. And imagine my surprise when I uncovered the will. And what did I see? Yes, the entire estate was meant to go to me. To me, and only me. Of course, I knew it. Stephanie clearly wasn't planning to sit on the sidelines when it came to the money. But here's what was really strange. If everything was written in my name, why were she and her loyal poodle Emma so persistently discussing changes to the will? You know what I began to suspect? They were obviously preparing a new document, one that wouldn't include me anymore. No doubt this slime was planning to write Emma into every clause. My father was blind as a bat and by the looks of it, would sign any damn paper put in front of him. Okay, I thought. If they're playing dirty, then I can outsmart them. I decided to hit back. It was time to be smarter than just spying behind doors. The first thing I did was order a copy of that will from a lawyer, just in case they actually tried to change anything. You know, like in the movies, when you need a copy of the original to pull out at the last moment in court and prove to everyone that you're not just a fool. And then I came up with an even more brilliant idea. I decided to install a hidden camera in my father's study. Yes, Alex, you're a genius, I told myself. Now I could record every conversation of this sweet pair and gather enough evidence to blow their plans to smithereens. Installing the camera was easier than I thought. I bought a small, discreet gadget that blended perfectly into the office's decor. And there I was, sitting in my little lair, feeling like some spy or even a hacker, ready to catch every dirty secret this family had to offer. Honestly, when I put that tiny camera in the study, I didn't expect them to start making their dirty plans right away. You know, like in the movies where the villains always get caught on camera with some crazy monologue. Yep, that's exactly what happened. As soon as I started reviewing the recordings, I realized I had walked into some kind of thriller, only without the budget or special effects. The recordings were pure gold. Stephanie was sitting across from my father with that nasty little smile I'd hated from day one. She wasn't just hinting. She was flat out ordering him to change the will. Point blank. If you don't rewrite everything for Emma, I'll leave you and take her with me. Now that's blackmail at its finest. I was even a little impressed by her nerve. Leave? Who would even stay with you? I thought, clenching my fists in anger. But that wasn't the end. No, she decided to put on a real show, right on camera, as if she knew I'd be watching. She squeezed out a few fake tears and continued with such drama that any director would give her a standing ovation. You don't understand. Alex has never appreciated you. He's a failure. He wastes your money and gives nothing in return. I'm the only one who truly loves you. Hey, what the hell? Failure? Seriously? I'd understand if she said I wasn't the perfect son. Yeah, who is? But to outright call me a failure in front of my father? That was too much. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling anger, hatred, and disgust boiling inside me. This wasn't just a game. She was really trying to make me look like a complete idiot in front of my own father. Her plan was simple, but effective. Emotional blackmail and threats. If it weren't for the camera, I think she'd fallen out of some reality show about family dramas. Stephanie was squeezing out every word like it was her last scene. If you don't do as I say, you'll lose me and Emma forever. Pfft, like he'd lose anything. Just leave already and let us be. But the worst part was that my father, damn it, was falling for it. I sat there, watching as he sat across from her, nodding, agreeing with every word, as if she were speaking the absolute truth. Alex never respected you, she repeated over and over, like a mantra. And that's when I finally understood. She had almost broken him. My father was so under her influence that he couldn't think for himself anymore. I wanted to storm into that damn study, smash everything to pieces, and prove to them that I wasn't who they thought I was. But I knew that moment would come later. And when it did, they would regret it. For now, my goal was clear. Gather as much evidence as possible and expose the scum for what they really were. All right, I thought. The moment of truth had come. Their dirty games were over. No more delays or grand monologues. I marched into my father's study with a copy of the will in hand. I felt like an actor walking into his final scene. I knew it was going to be epic. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, tossing the copy of the will onto the desk in front of him. He looked at the paper, then at me, not understanding what the hell I was trying to achieve. I could see he was confused, but I didn't yet know how soon that expression of confusion would turn into absolute shock. "Have you even seen this?" I pointed to the copy. My father stared silently at the will while I pulled out my ace, the camera recording. Everything was going exactly as I'd planned. I pressed play, and Stephanie's voice, the same one that had just been smiling somewhere in the next room, began playing from my phone. This was the moment. Her fake pleas of, "He never appreciated you, darling," and "Alex is a failure," echoed in the study like a clap of thunder. My father sat there, unable to believe what he was hearing, while I relished watching his reaction. Fire and deep disappointment appeared in his eyes. Oh, how he must have regretted falling for her cheap act. And then, right on cue, the diva herself entered the room. Stephanie. Yes, she walked in like an actress, ready for her applause. But when she saw my father's eyes burning not with love but with hatred, her pomp quickly evaporated. Barely holding back his anger, my father squeezed out, "How could you?" Stephanie froze as if she'd been caught red-handed robbing a bank. But like a true professional, she didn't lose her composure. Her face twisted with fear, but then her defense mode kicked in. The scene began. As if on cue, she launched into her usual victim role and screamed, "He's lying! It's all lies!" Oh, how convenient. Seriously? Lying? I almost laughed. Sure, I'm the liar, not you. The one caught on camera giving dirty instructions on how to ruin my life. Yeah, go tell that to the court, honey. But right now, I stayed silent. I didn't need to say anything. The recording spoke for itself. My father looked at me, then back at Stephanie. I could see 1,000 thoughts racing through his mind. He finally realized that she had been manipulating him for her own gain. His voice trembled with anger as he spoke again. "You said you were doing this for us, for our family. And now what? It's all for Emma?" His words cut deep. I even felt a bit sorry for him. The guy had just realized he'd been horribly deceived. Stephanie tried to mumble something in her defense, but it was too late. No matter how hard she tried, this game was lost. I just stood there watching her, thinking, well, how does it feel to hit rock bottom, my friend? I thought the end of this drama would be slow and painful, but my old man seemed to have decided to fast-track the finale. He sat there in silence for a few minutes, as if chewing over all the lies and betrayal. His eyes were no longer filled with doubt, only icy determination. And then he stood up, without a word. He just stood up. I saw Stephanie tense up. She thought she could still weasel her way out of this situation. You know, a few tears, a couple of pitiful glances, and everything would be back under control. But not this time. My father looked at her calmly and coldly said, "Pack your things." It was so harsh that I barely held back from applauding. Stephanie, of course, wasn't expecting such a turn. She just stood there at first, her mouth open like a fish thrown onto dry land. But before she could say a word, he added, "I'll erase both of you from my life and restore Alex's inheritance." And then the circus began. Stephanie, who a second ago was ready to grab her suitcase and leave, suddenly went into overdrive. "No, you don't understand," she began to bleat, her voice trembling like an actress who was suddenly asked to perform real drama without a script. "It was a mistake. Everything I did was for us, for our family." Yeah, right. All for the family. Only a little detail. By family, she meant herself and Emma, not us and my father. But this time, her performance moved no one. My father just stood there like a stone statue, ignoring her pitiful attempts to evoke sympathy. Honestly, who would believe her lies after all those recordings? And then, the cherry on top. Emma walked into the room. This sly fox, who had always been by her mother's side, milking my father for everything he had. But now, seeing her mother begging and throwing a tantrum, Emma clearly didn't understand what was happening. Her wide, innocent eyes darted between my father, Stephanie, and me. And you know, she didn't even have time to open her mouth before my father simply glanced at her and said, "You're both free to go. Leave wherever you want." Boom! Honestly, I didn't expect him to handle the situation so harshly. My father literally threw both of them out of his life with one short command. That was the moment when I realized that justice had finally been served. And honestly, I got a wild satisfaction out of it. Emma, of course, tried to say something. Her face twisted into some strange mix of horror and embarrassment. But what could she do? My father was unwavering. She and her mother had lost. And that's when I realized they never expected such a turn of events. In their script, it was supposed to end with them getting everything, and me being left behind as some kind of loser. But now they were out on the street. When Stephanie and Emma left, honestly, I expected it all to be over. You know, like in the movies. Victory, the credits roll, the hero walks into the sunset. But here's what I underestimated. Those creatures don't give up that easily. It took them just a couple of days to start their dirty games. They tried to contest the will. Yeah, I was shocked too. These ladies actually decided to go all in and claim my father was incompetent, saying he didn't even know what he was doing. What a load of crap. They launched a whole legal campaign, trying to prove that my father had been mentally incapable when he signed the will. He was under influence. He was forced. He was unfit. Come on, it was so cheap that even my lawyers were laughing. I could almost hear someone whispering backstage, "Give them an Oscar for the most pathetic attempt at manipulation." But I had all the aces up my sleeve. Those recordings from the camera, where Stephanie was pulling her dirty tricks, were enough to blow their plan out of the water. The judge literally smirked when we laid it all out. As soon as the recordings came into play, their lawyers went pale, and I thought they might actually throw up right there. The trial lasted several weeks, but with every new recording, with every new document I pulled out, it became clear that their house of cards was collapsing. And you know, I have never seen anything more satisfying in my life. Stephanie tried to wiggle out of it, playing the victim again. "I just wanted to protect the family." Yeah, sure, protect. Funny how whenever she talked about family, it only ever included her and Emma. When the court finally ruled in our favor, it was a sweet moment. Stephanie lost everything. Her husband, the money, the status, even the small scrap of respect she had squeezed out from her surroundings. And there she stood, this former drama queen, out on the street, with empty hands and even emptier promises. Emma, by the way, ended up with nothing too. Her dreams of living the high life off my father's money were shattered. Stepmom simply didn't manage to rewrite the inheritance to her. And you know, at that moment I realized one thing. They really thought they could outplay me. They thought I was some stupid idiot who couldn't handle anything. But they were wrong. And their defeat was so epic that I even thought about replaying it in my mind. That's how they ended up, with nothing. Now that it's all behind me, I'm living the life I've always dreamed of. Peaceful and drama-free. No more theatrical tantrums, fake smiles, and constant manipulation. Stephanie and Emma disappeared from our lives so quickly that I didn't even realize when they were completely out of the picture. And good riddance. Those two cherries were probably the worst actresses in my personal tragicomedy. Now I run my own business. Yep, guys, I've finally taken control of my life. Who would have thought that after all this crap, I'd have enough energy to build my own company? But here's the funny thing. Victory gives you wings. Not only did I expose their scam, but I also reclaimed what was rightfully mine. This wasn't just a success, it was an epic revenge. My dad? Well, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship. It doesn't happen with the snap of a finger like in the movies, but step by step we're becoming close again. After all, he suffered from all those manipulations too, and it took him time to realize how badly he'd been played. But what's nice is that now, with those toxic elements gone from his life, he seems more real. It almost feels like the old days when we could just sit down, have a beer, and laugh at how absurd it all was. Stephanie and Emma? Honestly, I'm not even keeping track of what happened to them. Seriously, as much as I'd like to mention them for a dramatic finale, they just vanished. Faded away like a failed TV show that got cancelled due to low ratings. And good riddance led them right off into the sunset, throwing dust in their own eyes. In the end, they left behind nothing but a bitter aftertaste, and a couple of funny stories I can now use to entertain my friends. The moral of the story? Never underestimate the quiet guy who just wants justice. And don't mess with those who are willing to step over you for their dirty goals. Because as they say, what goes around comes around. And now, sitting at my desk running my business, I can confidently say I won.